And you can say to the teacher, keep your hands away from the internet. Do not run off worksheets. It is all right here for you. You have your teacher guide, student guide, lesson plans. Everything is here. And we will give it to you and your life will be good.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and I am here with Paul Schaefer, Martin Cothran, and returning guest, Mrs. Kathy Becker. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you.
A smile on my face because I love having you on in town as you visit, and especially on the podcast.
Well, we enjoy one another, don't we?
I know. And I know your department enjoys you too. As a leader and as a partner, Kathy leads our schools division, which is an ever-growing team of representatives all over the country who help schools start schools, who help people, communities start classical groups, schools.
Yes. Who help, they help with curriculum, but with startup schools, they are instrumental in those foundations being built for a school. Busy, lots of startup schools around the country.
I know, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. But before we get to it, we always talk about what we're reading. Kathy will give you a break, unless you have something that you want to share right away.
Well, Paul and I were just talking this morning about the fact that I had just reread O Pioneers, Willa Cather, and how I love her. And, O Pioneers, you're reading that. And as I was reading it again, I was thinking some of the best enjoyable writing is done by the people who are simply writing their experience, right? So Willa Cather, settling Nebraska, the everyday life, and it draws us in, and it's pleasant, and we go there, and you would see the same thing, say, with a Wendell Berry. He's writing about the things he knows. Yeah. Or for children, Laura Ingalls Wilder, she wrote about the thing that she knew, her life that she lived. That is such pleasant reading. So enjoyable.
Is it set out west? Like where?
It's set in Nebraska.
Nebraska. Okay.
Yes.
You said that. Sorry. Oh, that's beautiful.
When Nebraska is being settled.
Okay. That's lovely. How about you, Paul?
I just finished listening to The Long Hunters. I'm not actually sure that it is in like physical book form. It might have been one of these like audio only books that they put out these days. But it's a history of Daniel Boone and the other market hunters just prior to the Revolutionary War that came through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky, and it covers the economics, that covers sort of the political nature of it, the struggles between the natives and these Europeans coming in. But also like the whole conservation, how much wildlife there was at the time, and fascinating. I mean, 20 years after Boone comes in, Kentucky's a state, and they start struggling to be able to hunt for the amount of meat they needed to survive. Whereas when he came in at the very beginning, I mean, they were killing hundreds of animals in a week. And then within 20 years, they would have to travel 20 miles to hunt for anything. And it's just mind blowing when you start thinking about that. And so it's really, really interesting. And I am thankful for the work, especially Theodore Roosevelt did in conservation to get the wildlife populations stabilized and back up. So what's interesting is we have about the same amount of deer now that we did then.
That's amazing.
Due to conservation.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really sad when you start reading about the buffalo. They slaughtered the buffalo just to kill them, left them there. Yeah, it was real.
Or they would take the one part they wanted, and that's what they did to a lot of the white-tailed deer. All they wanted was the skins. Yeah, because the skins were very lucrative
in trading.
Yeah, because they make leather out of them. They're not getting the fur. They scrape the fur off. All they wanted was the skin.
And people don't talk about passenger pigeons. These were dark. These darkened the skies in this country, and they were very large. I think they ate even, chestnuts. I think they were.
Really?
These were fairly big, and they shot them to extinction.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that and the decline of the American chestnut, which was at the bottom of the food chain for everything, and just the changes that have resulted from that. It's kind of scary.
I am continually amazed at the things you know. Who knows about chestnuts?
You know what, Kathy?
Oh, chestnuts.
To that extent.
Oh, Kathy, chestnuts are. Oh my gosh.
Are we going to go on a tangent about chestnuts?
I keep looking for chestnut trees to buy, and I want to plant them on the farm in ways where they're going to continuously start to propagate, because they really are a massive food source, or they were a massive food source for wildlife.
Oh, they were. Yeah, they were
really?
fundamental.
Yeah, but then we brought in somebody brought over an Asian chestnut that had a blight that American chestnuts could not withstand.
Yeah.
And so now the only thing that people are planting in America now are they're just coming out now with a hybrid American Asian chestnut that is resistant to the blight, because they all died of disease.
There's like a few little pockets of them that survived, like in Michigan. There's apparently some pretty good number of chestnut trees, but other than that, they all died.
Yeah.
Yep. Terrible. So. Can I?
Can you go ahead? Always.
No, I'm just
about chestnuts.
I'm going right now.
Please.
So yeah, I'm reading "On the Road" by Jack Kerouac.
Really?
Okay, one of the beat writers. These are the proto hippies. The 1950s, and it's this. It's that generation, and it's that part of society, and he's just bumming around America. And of course, there's no morals to the people involved, so that's obviously an issue. But you try to glean something good from whatever you're reading. For me, it because I remember before cell phones and computers and all that stuff, and what the world was like, and it is fundamentally different now. And this is the world before computers and cell phones, well before that world. And he's going across America, and it's all the things that happen to him as he's going. I'm thinking, you can't just, used to be, you could go out there and put your thumb up and somebody pick you up, and it wasn't dangerous, and you just take off. And they're talking to get, he and a couple friends in the car, and they don't have enough money to get to the next city. And you're thinking, did people really do this? And yes, they did. And all the different people they meet, and how every little town was different. It was isolated in ways that we are not isolated. We know the world. It's in our pocket. And it wasn't that way back then. That, little towns, even bigger cities, were isolated and they were unique. And now, you try to drive Route 66 or something now, it's not, it's all gone. All the old places are gone. And it's for people my age, that's kind of sad.
It is sad. We used to live on Route 66.
Yeah.
Really?
And yes, and in a little town out in the middle of nowhere. And all of those hotels along old Route 66 that have closed, and the restaurants.
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone wanted to get everywhere faster.
Yes, that's right. And Eisenhower putting the interstates in and all that, it just changed it too. That's why I always like the Disney movie Cars, because it's about one of those little towns.
It actually,
that got stranded because they put an interstate in and no one ever came there anymore. Yeah. So you got to seek out. There's still some places that you can find some authenticity, but you have to seek them out. They're not on the way anymore.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like an interesting read.
Oh, it's very interesting.
On to today's topic. Something our listeners may not know, but Paul and I and Martin know, is that, Kathy, your team, it seems like it's growing by the day.
It is growing by the day.
It is.
This week, 2 new representatives joined us.
I know.
So we're branching out across the United States and other places.
Really?
So it's growing. There's an interest in classical education, and it just gets bigger and bigger.
It does.
So, yeah.
It does. Well, I want to ask you some questions for our listeners who might be interested in starting a classical school. It seems like they're popping up everywhere, and we're there and ready to help wherever everywhere might be. So when it comes to starting a classical school, if someone wants to do that, what are some of the foundational things you would tell them? Like, if they don't even know where to start, they just have the desire.
Right. So I think, and of course, interrupt me if you have something to add, because you are wise.
And
You
Martin,
are
you
That's
started
why I
school.
like her.
I meant that for both of you, not just for you.
You will be interrupted, Kathy. Just keep going.
Yes, I will be.
She knows.
I think, first of all, you need to really be settled on your mission and vision.
Mhm.
You need to understand what classical education is.
Mm.
I think it's amazing. People in small towns across America that start classical schools, either it's a set of parents, several sets, or it's a lot of mothers who care about their children and they see this need. There are so many schools started by mothers. And I think that's because mothers just love their children and they just want the best for their children. And so they are willing to step out and do whatever they can to start a really good school. So you want to know, what is my mission? What is my vision? What is classical education? And can I share that with the people around me? How do I share that? And then, of course, with Memoria Press, we have the Classical Latin School Association where we have helps. The school representative will help them. We'll go to their school. We'll share with the people at their school. I'm actually, in just a couple of weeks, I just had a phone call with a school in Texas that they ask you to speak to their parents. Maybe they know what they want, but they just don't know how to articulate it exactly. So they ask us to come and help out. And that is one of the dearest, most enjoyable things you could ever do.
Yeah.
And Kathy, you mentioned that a lot of it's mothers that want to start schools. And I would say that the best schools are the ones that are founded by mothers who are already of the mindset of, I can teach my own children. Because sometimes you have schools a private school that's shutting down, or families that are in a public school that are unsettled or something. And then they're like, well, we want to go to start something else. But the reality is, what you're saying is, I'm confident I can educate my children, and I'm confident that I can educate somebody else's children. And so you need to have that first confidence of, I can educate my own children, but I'm willing to extend this to the community, because for one, it will give my children more opportunities. But for two, I believe I have something that I can offer other people. And because the heart and soul of a classical school is what happens in the classroom. All of the legal stuff, the financial stuff, all that stuff, it all has to be done. But the heart and soul of what the reason why you would do it is what's going to happen in the classroom. And so, I've seen a school that started with a lady who she had 10 kids or so, and she was homeschooling. And then she had another friend who had about 10 kids or so. And that mother said, I just can't do this anymore. I got to put my kids in public school. And she said, oh, please don't do that. She said, bring them over here. I will teach your kids. All of a sudden, she has 20 kids. And then a few other people catch wind. By the end of the school year, she's got 35 kids. And the next year, she's like, all right, I guess we're doing this. And she had a school with 100 kids by, the next fall. Sometimes that's all it takes. And then she had to do all the catch up of setting up all the legal stuff and the financial and making sure that they'd have a building and all that sort of stuff. But the main thing is, people are just hungry for good quality academics that are done in this, within this tradition.
It always surprises me, and it shouldn't, because schools like that start with basically mother love. I love my children. I love children. I want children to have a wonderful education. Because she's already taught her own, she is confident and steps into that. Often people want to start a school and they are so afraid. They are so afraid they will step wrong. But it's amazing when you see the experience he just talked about. When it just happens organically, I have my kids. I took in some kids. Oh, we took in some more. We took it. That is really a wonderful experience. And it harkens back. What does it harken back to? It harkens back to Cheryl Lowe was a mother who loved her children, who started to teach her children, and other people came in, and it grows from that. That's, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Do you so getting your mission and your vision?
Yes.
When it comes to that team, building a team, what would you say if someone says, I know I can't do this by myself, or it's growing to a point where I truly can't do this by myself? What are some tips for getting good people on board?
Well, I want to give you a good answer. I may have to rely on the men for this. But I would say make sure that the people that are your partners or partnering with you to do this are on the same page, are not progressively minded, really understand what you're doing. And you don't need lots and lots of people. Sometimes fewer people united in a goal is so much better than many people who are not united, and we don't get things done because we all have an opinion.
I see.
It's not the number of people. It's being united and directed in that goal. Of course, you want to look at things like you want to look at, let me look at my town. Who are the people in my town? What is the financial situation in my town? Just kind of be aware of those things. You're going to have to charge a tuition. How does that work? You have to make decisions about what grades are you going to start with. It is not advisable to start with a K through 12 because how do you take a child from a public school and suddenly put them in classical curriculum? It's very difficult, right? So it's good to start lower and build foundationally. You see that with Memoria Press curriculum, always foundationally. So those are a lot of things to think about. But I would just say as far as a partner, they have to be on the same page as the founder.
When I think a lot of the fear, there's a fear that a lot of particularly homeschooling mothers have about starting a school because they think there is this particular way you have to do it and all these particular steps you have to follow. And there are some things you've got to do, you've got to pay attention to, but it's not really a paperwork problem. It's simply, you do need a person as headmaster or headmistress who's got some leadership abilities, right?
Yes.
And then it's just the running of the school and all the regular things you have to deal with in running a school, which are there, but most of them are common sense problems. They're not, I don't know the regulation that governs this kind of problems. Would you agree with that? I mean, there's some things you have to
learn those things.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of like if you don't think about where are your kids going to have recess when it's raining, like let's say even outdoor field, you're going to have to figure that out the morning you get to school and it's raining and it's going to occur to you. Like you're not going to have everything figured out.
But one of the things that I do like about people who have a homeschool background doing this is they know what the essential things are. And they know that all the administrative stuff you have to do are secondary things. They are means to this end of really educating children. And I think a lot of homeschooling mothers, once they've, taught a few kids, maybe graduated a couple, they feel like, oh, I can do education, Then it just becomes a problem of the administrative things to do.
Right.
But that's also the beauty, I think, of what our organization, that helps schools does is that we have the paperwork stuff and all that sort of prefab for you, and so that you can concentrate on, implementing it, obviously, and teaching, because those are the important things.
And Jessica, your question about where you find these people, I think Kathy's point was spot on. Like you want to find people that identify with your mission and your vision. And I think, I've had so many schools tell me that, we have these conversations and then they would have their first open house where they're making public to the community. This is what classical is. This is our understanding. This is the way we are going to sort of incarnate classical in our community. And, so we're going to launch this next fall, whatever. Invariably, they would have 1, 2, 3 people come up and just say, I want to teach here. Like, I identify with what you are presenting as an idea. And so you really have to work on making sure that once you make that vision, once you have that vision clear, you need to communicate that clearly because the people of like mind that have been looking for this will come to you.
Yes, they will. They will be drawn to you. Yes. Now, the Classical Latin School Association has a startup notebook.
Do they?
That is such a help to startup schools.
Kind of like a field guide?
Yeah, it has templates for all different things that you would include in your paperwork.
Wow.
Based on HLS, it has so many
copies of handbooks.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Open house plans.
It helps the school with all these things that Martin says, the founder's uncomfortable with. She doesn't know how to do it. He doesn't know how to do it. We will walk you through that. We will help you do that. We will give you those things. So it makes it much easier for them to start a school.
Yeah.
And there's a trend. We tried to design it because we, the three of current and former heads of CLSA are sitting here at the table. We tried to do this in a way that it wasn't, there's a lot of stuff that's done in institutional schools, which is just not necessary. Yes. You don't need it. None of those, a lot of those things don't further education.
The mission of what's going on in your children's minds and hearts and souls.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what we've got is what you need. It's not any of the extraneous stuff. And so that's the beauty of it, so that you can you can concentrate on developing your curriculum and teaching your kids and all that.
And now, I mean, I've had people tell me, and this is, podcast supposed to be saying what we're good at, not what we're not good at. But I have had to, just so we're clear about what we're offering, is I've had people tell me like, what I really needed help with was organizational structure or how to mentor my board, for what that sort of thing, and we don't. I don't really think you can be handed a handbook that tells you here's how to mentor your board or here's how to structure an organization when you have 20 kids, when you have 40 kids, when you have 60 kids. That's something that you do have to kind of figure out in your local community with with the people that you've got around you. There may be a situation where there's a husband-wife team doing this. And so you've got two people already. It may only be one. It may just be the mom, it may just be the dad that has the time to dedicate to this. And all of those variables change things. And so you do have to think about, a healthy organization, but as Martin's point was, that's all secondary, and so if CLSA comes in to do an accreditation, we are going to ask the question: is your institution stable enough to, perpetuate itself? But the reality is, you will get that school up and running just by having a few solid classrooms.
And because I always tell people who are running schools, people who are starting schools, that your chief thing, I think, at the very top is to keep everyone's eye on the ball. Okay, you have to constantly propagandize, in the best sense of the word, your people about what you're doing, what classical education is, and why you are doing it. And you have to do it time after time after time, because that's the first thing that's gonna diminish if you're not constantly focusing on it. Would you agree with that?
Yes, totally. If you are the head of a school, and truthfully, private schools, private classical Christian schools, the average size of one, I always feel bad when people say, I only have 50 students in my school. The average size is 150 or less.
Really?
We're not talking about large schools. The amount of schools that would have 400 students are few and far between. So you want to reassure all these startup schools, it's okay. You're doing, you can do a great job. Matter of fact, sometimes smaller is better.
Well, I think a lot of times smaller is better.
I think a lot of times it is.
Cheryl really liked the concept of the old one-room schoolhouse. Jim, her husband, his father was the teacher at a one-room schoolhouse in rural Kentucky, and he got a great education. And if you live in a place like Kentucky, a rural area, you've met these old people who went to one-room schoolhouse, and they're among the best educated people you've run across. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, individual attention. Yes, it is so important.
I mean, I spent 1 year out of school when I was a child that my mom was helping start, that it was two teachers, and my mother taught K through 2, and the other teacher taught 3rd grade through 7th grade. So it was a 2-room schoolhouse. And I mean, we were probably, 15 to 20 kids max total. The teacher teaching 3rd through 7th, like she was the head of the school. And so she had to teach us. And then outside of the school day hours, she'd have to do whatever else it took. But, that meant certain subjects we all sat together 3rd through 7th grade, and certain subjects she'd bring us up kind of one by one and say, okay, this is, let's do your math. And like for somebody starting in school, you don't need to think about this as like, oh, I got to have a kindergarten class from 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade.
Yes.
Like there's going to be combinations, and families are going to be okay with that. Because of your vision, because they identify with what you're trying to do.
And also you have people who have, a lot of your student body is going to come from the homeschool community where, they realize they need some help on some things. They may have 5 kids, and this is very helpful to them to be able to, send their oldest child to your school or whatever. I started the first school I started, Mars Hill, Lexington, still in operation. We started with 7 kids. We started in the 7th grade. We started in the middle and then grew out from that.
But see, with 7, even starting at that age, you can give them the attention they need to learn the things.
But we had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
You think there's all these things you need to know. Not really. As long as you know the main important things, like we've been talking about, that's the most essential thing. The administration came along later, but it worked. And the people who graduated from that program, those 7 students, one of them is a famous person in the state, and others who are just extremely successful. They got a really excellent education, even though we didn't know what we were doing. Right.
I think we trap ourselves when we define a school having to be like a public school, or I attended public school growing up, so that's what I see school as. That is not what a startup person should be thinking of.
Not a rigid framework.
We need to stop letting that define our view of what school is. I work with so many of these little startup schools who have combined grades, and they do it well. There's a school in West Texas. I was in their K1-2 room observing all K1 and 2. These are babies, 5, 6, 7. And they had learned, they were each in their own. Now they were at tables, but it was K1 and 2. The teacher would teach kindergarten and 1st and 2nd were working on their work. They knew exactly what to do, not a peep out of them. Then she'd go over to 1st, and it was amazing. And the things they could do together, they would do together. There are ways to do this, but don't ever refrain from starting your school because you think you have to have combined classes.
Well, or individual classes.
I mean, individual classes. Yeah, individual
The other
classes.
thing, too, is how much having a coherent curriculum makes your job easier. If you have, my wife, she always says, I wished I had Memoria Press. We were helping develop it at the time. I wished I had Memoria Press's curriculum to use in my home school, because then you don't have to worry about when do you teach what. It's right there. Right. And that makes the whole thing, you're not only getting some, administrative help and some documentation from CLSA, you're also getting a curriculum. That's even more, that's even huger.
Well, and you can, your school can grow, like you can start it in so many different ways and grow many different ways. Martin mentioned that you started in 7th grade, and then grade-wise, starting in 7th grade, and then they would add on 8th grade the next year, and they probably added 6th grade as well. So you kind of work your way down and up, right? I don't know how many days a week that was. One day a week, right?
You can do it.
And I don't know, are they now 2 or 3 days a week?
They may be
something like that.
Yeah, and they grew up first and then they grew down.
Right.
So.
And so that's the thing, is you can start 1 day a week and add on a 2nd day, add on a 3rd day, add on a 4th day. That's what Highlands did. And Highlands started we probably had 3rd through high school in it, because I remember sitting in a room when I was in 4th grade and we had high schoolers in the room and Cheryl was teaching all of us. But she started kind of with a bunch of grades and then grew the days. Other people that I've helped start, they started with 4 days a week because they were modeling after Highlands, but they started just with junior kindergarten. The next year they had a kindergarten, next year 1st grade, and they were just going to go up 1 year at a time for 13 years. And so there's a whole lot of different ways to start and a whole lot of different ways to grow, where it's not just, because charter schools will come into an area and they'll plop down with 600 kids and they've got everything K-8, you don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. And, you can start off as a homeschool program that's going to eventually grow into a school, that's considered a full-time school. Or you can, start as something that's full-time school, but I only have 1 or 2 grades, or I can start, one school I can think of, they were going to start K-3. And this was a church endeavor, but the church was trying to really spin it off to be its own, which they were successful in doing that. So the church was not, sometimes the church starting something, the church trying to be involved in school is a recipe for disaster. But they were going to start K-3, but they had so much interest. They said, okay, well, we got to start K-5.
Wow.
And so they started K-5 and then they added, a grade year over year. So they started with that base. So it wasn't just kindergarten, started K-5 and they grew up and they were doing 5 days a week from the get-go. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways to start and grow.
And bring what you're saying back to the point I was making, and I was just another thing I needed to say to Kathy about what she said is that's an easier thing, again, when you have a coherent curriculum that you know what you need to do. Because the reason one-room schoolhouses worked is because they had a curriculum. It was readers. You knew
you had your McGuffies.
You had your McGuffies. Say, where are you in the McGuffey's readers, Baldwin and Bender readers, whatever they were? Where I'm in the middle of the third reader. Right. Everyone knew where they were, and they could be at different. And so the teacher could go around, and she knew where every child was in the readers. So there was no mystery about where everybody was, and you could do more things with different demographics in your classroom because you had a set curriculum. And I don't think people even think about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's really helpful to hear that the curriculum really proves to be a through line when it comes to even for the children, certainly, but even organizationally. And if you think about leading a team, there's something predictable. There's something they're capable. They have instruction that you don't have to develop at 2:00 in the morning when you're preparing for the next day.
Right. And when you don't have that curriculum, I remember when we had our foster kids last year, the homework was coming home where the younger child was having more advanced math work than the older child.
Okay.
And that was just, they were in different grades and it was just, they were sitting home, it was coming out of this, I could tell it was coming out of the same resource book, but one teacher was, the first grade teacher was further beyond where the second grade teacher was because there wasn't this defined, this is where the progression should be.
Right.
So you can give them our curriculum and then you can say to the teacher, keep your hands away from the internet. Do not run off worksheets. It is all right here for you. You have your teacher guide, student guide, lesson plans. Everything is here. And we will give it to you and your life will be good. But I do want to tell you about this one school before we go.
Please do.
Because in March, our one of our on-site accreditation teams will be going to do accreditation observation at a school in Central Texas near Austin. And this school was started 2 years ago by 2 mothers. And I remember they came to a regional we had in Fort Worth and they listened and they decided this is what they were going to do. And so they started a school. Their school has grown each year. They are 4 years in. And of course, they became a partner with CLSA. They took advantage of all the training they could get. But as the years have developed, they're doing great. And now they're ready to step into accreditation. And that was 2 mothers who said, we will do this thing. That's amazing.
It's incredible. You know what just came to my mind too is I bet they'll be at our conference in July. And that's probably a great place that if someone's interested or has just started, can come and see that they're part of something way bigger than just their little thing that they're starting, you know?
Yes. And teacher training is not only great for teacher training, but seeing other people like you that are doing this too. We can all be encouraged.
That's right. That's right.
It's a very good thing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, you see them like at lunch at the picnic tables, and you can tell what's going on. Is there's one administrator sitting there and another one across the picnic table, and they're sharing stories and they're asking questions of each other, and that is really helpful to be around other people doing the same thing.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And with the same common curriculum.
With the curriculum is amazing.
Because it's not just creating that spine in your school, but it's also creating where you can go to another school and say, okay, I know you're doing this curriculum. And so, you start from that common foundation.
And help with problem solving too. Like they may be solving different problems, but they're using creativity and
absolutely. And some of the best advice that I feel that I share to other people, I gleaned from an administrator that said, we came up with this idea. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. And then I go around and I share that to everybody because it's a good thing that makes other schools successful.
And generally we think it came from him.
No.
And,
That's fun. Oh. So if someone wants to get connected with a schools rep, they can reach out. We've got the schools division tab on the website. There are a lot of different ways to get in contact with you and your team.
Yes. And they can email schools@memoriapress.com with their questions. At that point, they'll be directed to the rep for their area. And our reps love to talk to people.
They are talkers. They are talkers.
We
they
got
talk and talk and
a
talk.
little bit. Yes. I mean, you couldn't work with schools if you didn't love people and
That's right.
love everything about it. Matter of fact, somebody said that yesterday. I was on the phone with a school in El Paso and someone was listening and they said, oh, after I hung up, she said, you really like that person, don't you? It was the principal of school. And I actually do really enjoy these people. They're lovely people. It's a mission as much as anything else. If we can share the true, the good, and the beautiful with our society, that's a wonderful thing.
And so rewarding.
Oh, very much.
So rewarding. Yeah.
Hey,
Yes.
can I say one thing
Please
here? So I recently had a USDA person come on the farm to help me with something. And this is not to toot my own horn because this is a direct analogy to these schools. And he came around and I was like, I got this problem. I'd like to fix this. What do you suggest? And so very much I'm in that moment in the sort of this, like the principal where our schools reps come in and help. I'm asking for help. I'm asking for advice. And he says, Paul, I just need you to know that you're doing this better than 99% of the other people. And I was like, I can't see that. I'm just trying to do my best on my little piece of land and I can't see that. And that's something that our schools reps actually, when I've gone around and visited schools, it's a wonderful thing because I can come in and I can look at a school and I can give them encouragement and say, what you are doing is amazing, but they can't see that from their perspective because they're in the battles and the weeds of their everyday. And we can go around and say, look, we were at another school the other day and they've got a whole, where you're at, you're doing a phenomenal job.
Because it's hard to measure success when you don't necessarily define success, to your point, by 400 students as your enrollment barometer.
Yeah. These little schools where the principals are in the trenches every day. It is a real joy for us to be able to come in and say to them, you are appreciated. You are doing the good thing. Keep doing it. How many people are telling a principal that? Not many, because principals deal with lots of things that come into their life with families and everything else. And so, yeah, we get to do the fun thing of encouraging and, guiding, all of that. It's very, very fulfilling.
Is there a web address they go to?
memoriapress.com/schools.
There you go.
There you go. You'll reach Kathy, her team, and someone likely close to you that you didn't even know was close to you.
Yes.
Yeah, in your region. Well, that's wonderful. Anything left to add about starting schools? I know you've worked with schools for a long time, and Martin, you've done it yourself.
Just take the leap.
Yes.
Take the leap. You can do it. It is not, it sounds like it sounds like a huge unsurmountable endeavor. It is a huge endeavor, but it is totally doable. And I'll guarantee you there are people in your community that are looking for it too.
And if you are really feeling burdened to start a school, contact us. We will take your hand. We will help you through. We will be that person to support you.
Well said. Thank you for joining us, Kathy.
Oh, thank
Always
you.
a joy. And thank you, Martin and Paul, for what you added. And now I know a little bit more about chestnuts too. And thank you for joining us. You can find out more at memoriapress.com/schools. We'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.